very few people want to take the leap. And I think it's just a matter of perspective. It's not about whether you've got the guts to do it or not. It's just about whether you've figured out whether it's the right move for you or not. If anyone is considering making a move or trying something like this, just back yourself and give it a go. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out and you go back to square one. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world that could happen. I'd rather try, have it not work out than live with regret. I didn't do uni. I went straight into work. I wanted to get to work straight away. The suburb I grew up in was pretty heavy density public housing, so mission critical for me was making money. At the age of 19, I was gone, bought my first property as soon as I could, and I got into selling stock market newsletters. It's not about getting a certain dollar amount, it's just about winning. I think it's about trying to do better for myself and my family. That's always a driving force.
What made you jump from Minto to Bondi?
I would say
Private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with industry leaders to help you navigate the world of finance and investments. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we have a very special guest, Kieran Berry, joining us. Today we'll delve into Kieran's extensive career from product newsletter sales to stockbroking to an established investor and wealth manager who's personally invested in and advised on multiple asset classes over a decade of experience and knowledge in the wealth management sector. Kieran co-founded and successfully scaled his wealth management business at Shaw & Partners while setting up the next generation in wealth management services at Riverex. We'll explore some of the key lessons you learned on the way. So without further ado, let's dive in the conversation with Kieran. Thanks for coming in.
cheers, mate. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. How about we start at the beginning? Give us a summary of who you are, what you're currently focused on from a business perspective.
Yeah, so from the beginning, I grew up out west in Campbelltown. I sort of was very into sport growing up. Played a lot of rugby league, swimming, boxing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I was always pretty good at that. Always had a good routine. And anyone who's ever worked with me before knows that I'm still bit obsessed with it. So I still go train once or twice a day, sort of up at 4 a.m. So I've always had a good routine and that's served me well in my personal and professional life. So I did my education out there as well, but Western Sydney roots and that obviously gave me a bit of an edge, I think, coming into the wealth management space because I was different. 9 out of 10 guys that I worked with were sort of private school, come from white collar families where it was total opposite where I grew up. Sort of blue collar roots out there. And that just gave me a different perspective on things.
Awesome. So where'd you go to school? What was the high school?
Mount Carmel was the high school. Not too far from where I grew up in Minto. Which is it's also a pretty well known suburb. So I grew up out that way. A lot of kids I played footy with, I still stay in touch with today. Are based out there, and it's
amazing the networks you develop when you're sort of a young kid going through high school. You can keep hold of them. It's actually valuable later in life as well. Also give you a different perspective because you're right, in the banking world, inner Sydney, it's for years has been a private school dominated type industry, particularly investment banking. So coming from a different background, I'm sure it does make a difference.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised at some of the networks I have today. Like it just so happens that some of the blokes I grew up with, whilst majority of them got into trades growing up, a few of them have become successful in their own right in different sectors. Like I got one mate who's a partner at RSM. He's one of their top performing partners in town. I got another mate who's got an injection molding business. Several others that went on to play rep footy. Some of them have just come out of the NRL now that I still chat with on the side. And I wouldn't have expected that growing up, that I had a few mates that would really excel like that. And I've got others that have just excelled in other ways that you wouldn't expect. Like, one of my mates absolutely smashed it in crypto. He's like, he retired at the age of 30.
Good on him.
One of those guys. And another bloke's ended up founding one of Australia's largest buyers agencies as well. So those old school networks of mine have served me well, but definitely completely different network to what a lot of my peers have had coming up through this industry.
I think the sporting background's pretty handy too. I know when I interview kids and younger people, I look at their CV and see who they play footy for, because I just find they've got it's generalising, but often just that competitive spirit. Our industry is competitive. You got to be competitive, to stay personally fit, competitive to educate yourself, and competitive just in how you do business, particularly you having sort of started your own business.
Yeah.
You got that sporting background's pretty handy.
Yeah, it's not just the competitive edge, it's the consistency about it. So there's a certain cadence that I work at. So anyone who worked with me even if they worked within 50 meters of me in my prior role, they would have heard me on the phone all day, every day.
Gotcha.
Always had a very good work rate, and I've continued that in this role.
Gotcha.
And that's what's enabled me to help build the business. And having that consistency, showing up every day, putting in the reps, or putting in the work. There's a lot of things that I guess a lot of similarities between the workload that you'd have as a young athlete, and what you'd have in the professional world today.
Gotcha. Now, taking a step back again, post high school, did you kick on to uni?
No, I actually didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't do uni.
Yep.
I went straight into work.
Gotcha.
So look, at school, I excelled in certain subjects, and others I'd just fall asleep in. So like if I wasn't really engaged or interested, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, got you.
So I wanted to get to work straight away. I grew up in an area, and the suburb I grew up in was pretty heavy density public housing. So mission critical for me was making money, and it was getting into the eastern suburbs and getting closer to work. So at the age of 19, I was gone. I was living in Bondi, straight from Minto to Bondi, which is a bit of
spot to live.
Bit of a sea change. But I went out straight away. Bought my first property as soon as I could, and I started working actually went to a recruiter to try and find a job. I knew sales was probably something that I could make money in pretty quickly without holding a university degree. And I got into selling stock market newsletters straight out of high school. And I did my RG 146 way back when. Since then, I've done the graduate diploma, financial planning, and a bunch of other Kaplan studies along the way.
That's great.
So that then got me into a situation where I've met all the FASEA requirements. But it was definitely a different path.
For sure.
Compared to what a lot of my peers
do. That you've just been learning the whole way through.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, learn by trade. And like I said, there were things at school that I was super engaged in, and other things I'd fall asleep in. And this doing it this way meant I was always engaged. I'm always learning. I'm pretty astute. So like, when I was working around guys that were far more senior than me, or working around C-suite executives that were just a lot better than me, I'd pick up on things they did. And I'd also pay very close attention to what worked for them and what didn't work as well.
Gotcha.
Different style of doing
That's pretty cool. Pretty interesting background.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. Okay, now a couple of people influenced you through your life.
Yeah.
A couple of people?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had a lot of people that have influenced me, and I wouldn't say there's any one person that's been a massive contributor behind what I do today or the way I do things. But, I've worked in a handful of different businesses now. One or two of those businesses taught me a lot in terms of what I liked, but more importantly, what I didn't like. And there are lots of things that I didn't like in certain businesses, like, things that were heavily reliant on transactions, or businesses that had underperforming divisions with them that we had to carry. So, that sort of shaped the way I do business today.
Gotcha.
But I wouldn't say that there's a specific role model that I have in mind. But I listen to all the same commentators most people do. Your Elon Musk, your Dana White, your Donald Trumps, that sort of stuff, who are pretty prominent right now. But no one person in my life.
Good on you. What about pivotal moments, right? So you've already told me about a couple. So what made 19 years of age, pivotal moment, what made you jump from Minto to Bondi?
Well, it's just, obviously I was in an area that was probably 80% public housing. Right?
Gotcha.
And I made a lot of good friends in that place. I just didn't want to be there. I wanted to get out, and I wanted to sort of move into a different location. Number one, that was closer to the city. But number two, I just always had that drive to try and sort of get out of where I was and build something bigger. So I absolutely loved growing up out there. But that was a pivotal moment for me. But then there have been other things that have been pivotal along the journey as well. So I would say making the decision to jump into wealth management was a pivotal moment. I did that at 23 in a commission-only role with absolutely no client book whatsoever.
Yeah, wow.
So that
Pick up the phone.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was like, look, mate, you seem pretty bright.
Yeah.
You've got the right qualifications. Here's a PC and a telephone. Get to work.
Yeah, got you.
So I was seated around some really good advisors when I started that journey.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of listened, learned on the job. To be frank, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, that's how people learn, right?
Yeah, so I had no idea what I was doing when I first started, but I took a risk, took a chance early in my career.
Yeah.
I kind of felt that if things didn't work out, I was young enough that I probably could have recovered.
For sure.
But it did work out. And I just had that drive to keep hitting the phones, to keep making connections, networks, building my referral networks. And that ultimately led to building a pretty significant client book. And then I've been able to use that to cornerstone this business that I've started today.
And so that, turning up no clients, you obviously just picked up the phone. Did you have a plan? Like, did you have a script? Or you just thought, I'm going to ring up and wing it? Or did you actually methodically say, I'm going to ring this person and this is how I'll try and take the conversation?
So I knew that I needed referral partners. Yeah. So I did have a script. Gotcha. And I knew what I was doing. So in terms of like, I knew what I was doing when I was picking up the phone. Yeah. But if you'd asked me how to value a company or how that, like, forget about it. That would have been a thing that was completely foreign to me. So I knew that I had to network quickly. So I was at every single investor event. I was getting out to as many networking opportunities as possible. Yeah. And then I just started showing them good product. Yeah. So I started to show them things like the bank hybrid securities.
Yeah, I remember.
Which might be a thing of the past soon. But sort of the lower risk solutions were the ones that got me the most traction. Yeah. So then I started just getting out, handing out business cards, burning out the rubber on the shoes, and just meeting as many people as I could to build my network.
Gotcha.
That meant a couple of months of sort of feast or famine, as it goes in that type of work. Yeah. But then over time, I built up a more substantial client book that had sort of funds under management fees attached to it rather than just being reliant on brokerage. Yeah. And then when I'd say probably about 4 or 5 years into it, which is jumping forward a little bit, that's when I started to really focus on best of breed fund managers, good quality funds under management, a little bit of alts, so things like your commercial real estate, private credit, PE, VC solutions. Yeah. And as soon as I did that, my business changed dramatically. And when I say my business, it was my business because in my prior role, I was a contractor. I owned the clients. Gotcha. And I always viewed it as my business within a business. And as soon as I started going into those other asset classes, opposed to just sitting there and buying and selling BHP and CBA, my book scaled significantly. Gotcha. And I think that's because the volatility came right out of it. Yeah. The returns were more consistent. Yeah. The income jumped up a bit as well. So for my clients, they loved it. And then I've used that same blueprint to educate the advisors that we're bringing to this team now. Sounds
you're an early mover in alternative assets.
I don't know if I'm early. I just feel like Australia's late.
Yeah.
Like you look at offshore, the markets are far more developed than what they are here. I've been reading the UBS family office report, the Goldman Sachs family office reports. I read them every single year. And they've been showing for years that there's been a developing trend away from the 60-40 portfolio. Yeah. And in Australia, it's only more recently that we're seeing more financial advisors adopt the same strategy. I noticed that when I was winning accounts, 9 times out of 10, it would be just an equities portfolio.
Gotcha.
And the advisor might not even have visibility over the TDs or any fixed income exposure at all. Yeah. And when I was coming in and repositioning portfolios, clients were pretty surprised with the outcomes because the ASX 200, the return on the index over 10 years annualized, 8 to 9% per annum. Yeah. That's on the ASX 200. I can go buy a regional shopping centre, 9% yield, 15 to 17% IRR. We're just talking about one before the pod started, coming out of Centre Group. And we're getting shown these assets all the time now. Yes, it's got a different liquidity profile, but you've just got to get the asset mix right for the client. Yeah. And you can do really well in alts.
Yeah. But that liquidity question, right? Like everyone always seems to want liquidity. The question is, do you really need it, right? Like I still speak to some people about, a 50-year-old with an SMSF, right? You actually can't get that money out until you're over 65.
That's right.
It's like, so you don't need liquidity. You've got 15 years. You're better off getting the liquidity premium. If you want liquidity in your personal capital outside SMSF, fine. Maybe you do need it to a renovation or whatever. But within an SMSF, it's a perfect vehicle to invest in liquid assets for quite a period of time. Obviously age dependent. But it's interesting that people still give up, I think, leave returns on the table because they think they need liquidity.
Yeah, it just depends on the client, where they're coming from, what they want. And that's where, knowing your client is so powerful for financial advisors. And, it just depends on like which shop they're coming from as well. So we've inherited some clients from some shops that have had some shocking performance.
Gotcha.
And I think what we're seeing now is a transition away from those traditional broking houses
for sure.
into or traditional broking models into strategies like this. And there was an article in the paper yesterday from MST where they talked about the underperformance of corporate mandated research and the underperformance of these junior companies on the ASX that really have no earnings. Now, brokers love those companies because they pay big fees.
Yeah.
You get a corporate mandate, you get your 6% plus options or whatever it might be on those type of transactions. So the brokers love it. But are they right for Aussie investors? I reckon 99% of them aren't.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode.
I worked at a shop that did many, many corporate mandates over the years. Some were good, most of them not.
Yeah.
And because the reality of it is most of these companies, you're not giving them capital to give them a next leg up in growth. A lot of them, it's a lifeline.
Yeah.
And, as a junior guy coming through the ranks, I didn't even really realize that's what was going on. So I participated in heaps of these transactions over the years. And you probably get 2 or 3 out of 10 that shoot the lights out. And that would be the lure that would bring people back to those deals all the time. But I found that now that I've stepped out of that environment and there's no longer a temptation or even my visibility for my clients.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that the clients always found confusing is you might be in a house that has a buy recommendation on a stock that's unprofitable. Share price is down. It's probably going to trade under after they've done the placement.
Yeah.
And the clients are logging into their online portal and they're going, well, hang on a minute. Like, you've got a buy recommendation on these 10 stocks and 9 of them are down. Why aren't you saying it's a buy?
Yeah.
And you got this conflict where I'd have to be honest with the client and say, look, if you read the fine print, there's a mandate on that one.
Gotcha.
So whilst the house has a buy, I don't think it's the right buy for you.
Gotcha.
So that's why I think we're seeing a massive change in the strategies and the tact of financial advisors and more appetite from the investment community to get into alts.
What's interesting about iPartners business, the earlier movers into our funds and our asset classes have been more boutique shops. The traditional sort of broking types have been a lot slower to move. And obviously we've done some work together over the years. But it is, it's always these new groups that are actually more nimble, prepared to do something a little bit different, doing the research on alternatives and the benefits. And it's been interesting watching the traditional groups, how slow they are to make some of these decisions to transition to alts, basically.
I think that really comes down to who's controlling the APL and what's their motive behind that APL. So, I've seen how APL works at different shops now. I would say obviously our investment committees can be quite nimble because we get together once a month. We have an IC circular. We can push things through a bit faster. But there are some, at the bigger shops, I think the difficulty is one, they might have more people involved, so the process might take longer. But number 2, there might be existing relationships that are entrenched there already and people want to see their mates get the flow ultimately. Even if there's no financial gain to be had. That they might have relationships where they want it to go a certain way.
Gotcha.
I can remember bringing certain things to a prior investment committee that were constantly rejected, only to find that 3-6 months later, it ends up getting passed because someone's got a mate there.
Yeah.
I think that's probably pretty normal to see boutiques move faster. But hopefully that changes.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, what drives you in business? It's a bit of a fluffy question, but it's sort of you obviously get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So you're obviously motivated in life in general, but in business, what drives you?
It's just the competitive nature of it, to be honest. It's not about getting a certain dollar amount. It's just about winning. I think it's about trying to do better for myself and my family. That's always a driving force. I'm a father with 2 young kids, so I launched this business in January 2023, which is a little over 18 months ago.
Wow. Yeah.
But I've got a 1-year-old daughter. And my son turns 3 in January.
Yeah, I got you.
And so on top of the training and the business, I've got that at the same
I got you.
time. So I'm interested in building a future for them, which is, I think, the best motivation. But I just want to do something that's a bit different.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to set out and run my own business. So I knew probably, 2 years before I left my prior role that I was going to do this.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't by mistake. It wasn't like I was taking a chance. I actually did the numbers, and the risk was actually staying put.
Yeah, I got you.
Had I stayed put, I'd be in a far worse position than what I'm in today. So it was an easy choice for me to make the jump.
Gotcha. Billy like pressure, home pressure, work pressure, exercise.
Yeah. Own pressure is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Like no one's putting pressure on me to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just me.
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people find interesting, and I think this has probably got something to do with your background and how you progressed to where you are today, but what made you jump from, I know your previous shop was a reasonably large broking firm, probably nice, comfortable sort of seat you had, lots of people around you. What made you make the jump to setting up your own business? Because it's risky to start your own business, right?
It is. It just depends on how you perceive risk.
Yep.
I sort of got to a level where I thought that was the level I was going to reach within that business.
Gotcha.
And I felt that that's where it was. And different things happened there over time where I perhaps lost trust and perhaps my view of the business changed over the years because different things happened over my journey there. And then I just felt, I have more control over my outcomes in an alternate environment.
Gotcha.
I just thought, I probably had learned what I was going to learn.
Gotcha.
And I also felt that I was the one now coming up with the investment ideas. So if it's the case that you're paying away half of your pay packet to your shop, or I know there are other shops where you're paying away more than half, but you're not getting a consummate amount of return for that investment that you're putting in, well, then the risk then remained staying there and potentially being capped out where I was. So I could have kept scaling my book there easily. I could have just sat there and it would have been a very easy, comfortable position. Where I sat, I could see the ocean. I was pretty chilled at work. I had a good base. I could have just sat there and my funds under management would have just kept ticking over. It would have just grown organically, frankly, with the market because of the way it was set up. And I could have just had a very comfy life. But I like pressure. I like putting myself in uncomfortable situations, and I knew that I could scale this much more outside of that environment. It was like, I could go in a client with $5, $10, $15 million of assets, right? And you're charging them a 1% funds under management fee. There might be some transaction costs in there as well. But the step change in your business from signing 1, 2, or 5 of those clients is very different to signing 1, 2, or 5 advisors. So now So now I'm in a position where I could sign someone who's got a book of 20, 30, 50, 100 million. So it's like the scalability of that model changed significantly. A lot of people said I couldn't do it at the beginning, and I'm still very early in my journey. So anything could happen. I didn't think I'd go from 0 to sort of 20, and we'll have 25 soon on the 2 licenses that I own. I didn't think that would happen that quick. I took an office space that's probably suited to 5 or 10 blokes.
Gotcha.
Not 25. And there's 35 within the business in total. That includes like support staff, our administrative team, which is offshore, and operations, compliance, all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
So I didn't anticipate that. So now I'm like in this interesting position where I need to take a second office in the CBD out. Just until both leases end and we'll go upgrade to a bigger floor.
We had exactly the same problem. You're always juggling seats. And the work from home's probably helped to a degree, like people sort of drifting in and out.
I've been supportive of that. If you want to work from home a couple of days a week, great. As long as you're getting the output. That's all that matters. It's these guys are compliant. If they're getting good results for their clients and the clients are happy, those are the things that I care about the most, because that'll then lead to success in your business. And because it's still a small business, I have generally a pretty good feel for that. I see every inquiry that comes to the front door. I see everything, like in terms of portfolio performance. I can download it all in one spot, have a look at what's going on. So I've got a pretty good feel for the performance of the business and the type of investments that we're into.
Gotcha.
And I can honestly say that I'm really comfortable with the way the guys are operating.
That's great. Now, take a step back again. So you've made that leap from the big broker shops up. Did you think about your setting up because you got young kids as well? Did you think about setting up your personal finance just, for a 6-12 month window, thinking, probably not going to make any money in the first month.
Yeah.
And I've got all this money's going out the door. Is there a little bit of a plan there how you manage that transition period?
Yeah, I modeled all of it, right?
Gotcha,
So
yeah.
I built a nest egg up. I then figured out how much I needed for Bond, PI,
Gotcha.
all the different platforms. I then needed obviously like a website.
Yeah.
I needed basic staff. Like there was no way I was going to do it solo.
Yeah.
So I did need to sign some business writers and quick.
Yeah.
I then needed to get the right support team as well. So I at least needed a DA or an administrative assistant. And I needed a back office solution and fast. So I started this process of modeling it all out. I went and looked at all the platforms I wanted to use, got an understanding of their costs, the costs for all of their services, just went through like a bit of a discovery process. I was lucky in that I was already using a lot of these platforms anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
So I already had relationships internally, so I could just pick up the phone and say, hey, mate, tell me the truth. What are your baseline costs? I've read it in your PDS, but what does it actually cost if I wanted to self-license or if I wanted to do this? And the platforms are all wonderful because, I mean, even though they might have an account with one person, they ultimately want to keep the assets on platform.
Sure.
So having that conversation was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And then, once I had it all completely modeled, that's when I knew, because it was like, right, well, if I just sat here and kept doing what I'm doing, like I said, I'm going to be X or Y in the next decade.
Yeah.
Or if I can achieve these milestones, this is what the picture looks like if I do take the leap. Gotcha. And that's where it took all the risk out of it. And I wasn't nervous about it at that point.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. Yeah. So the planning relieved the pressure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, what about a few bumps in the road? From 19 years of age leaving Minto, there must have been some stuff that went wrong.
Oh, mate, heaps of stuff's gone wrong along the way. I've even tried to run side hustles and little businesses. Like during COVID, I tried to run a gym equipment business. That was no good. I've tried to do many things in my career where I've tried to maybe overstep, just reach for the stars, land on the moon type of thing.
Yeah.
But I would say stepping out to run this business, while I thought it would be super easy, it's always harder than what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Winning talent is the number one hardest thing in this line of work.
For sure. Yeah.
Winning talent, retaining talent, keeping people happy. I think that I had a model that I thought you'd see a big transition, but ultimately the economics not the only consideration when you're speaking to the financial advisor.
Sure.
And I've now catered for that, given that we have access to research and access to great product and platforms through teams like yours. But that was definitely a bit of a setback. I thought that you'd jump in, plug and play. And to be honest, when I was moving the clients, they did put up a bit of a fight, trying to retain them where they were.
Yeah,
but ultimately it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I'd say that was it. But in terms of sporting, plenty of setbacks there. But a knee reco, but a shoulder reco, got 2 bulging discs in my lower back. I'm carrying all the war wounds of a wannabe footy player.
Is that league?
It was league. Yeah.
Good on you. And then I'm flipping it, right? A few bumps in the road. What's some key learnings that you've picked up along the way? If someone was listening to this, what sort of tips would you give them?
I think the main thing is to back yourself. The key learning for me is that every time I back myself, even though I've gone through maybe a period of discomfort or a period of pain, whether that be playing sport or whether that be building a business, I've always ended up with an outcome that I'm relatively happy with.
Gotcha.
And even if I've tried and failed, I'm happy because I've had a go. Because I'd rather not live with the regret of not having a go. So if anyone is considering making a move or trying something like this, just back yourself and give it a go. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out and you go back to square one. But it's not the worst thing in the world that could happen. I'd rather try, have it not work out than live with regret.
Yeah, it's funny. So that's the exact reason I left UBS was you don't want to look back and get to a certain age and go, shit, I'm still sitting in this same seat. I'd never had a crack and now I'm too old or I sort of missed the opportunity. But it is that you just really do have to roll the dice and back yourself to get there.
Mate, you know what scared me? I walked into the prior firm I was at. When I joined that firm, the average age of the advisor was 52. Now, there's been a dearth of new entrants to the industry. Hardly any young guys are coming in now. And I saw these blokes that are probably going to die on the chair. like they literally will. They'll pile the furniture.
I know the exact types you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking
They're
about?
just buying and selling equities all day.
Yeah. Some of them still had paper tickets. I was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And to be honest, that scared me more than anything. I was like, if I end up like that would be horrible for me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the bloke, because they would always tell me the war stories by the water cooler. I wish I'd started my own shop, or I should have done what you're doing. And I was thinking, mate, why haven't you just done it?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like, what's holding you back?
Mm.
And then 10 years rolled by within that organization. They're in the same seat, telling the same war stories. And I was like, fuck, this isn't going to change.
Yeah. Another thing gets you is the grizzling that often comes from those types of being there. They've been there so long, they know everything, and all they've got left is to grizzle.
Yeah, there's a lot of
the mental challenge of that.
There's a lot of complaining, and even to this day, I was talking to a lot of my mates in different shops, and they always have different gripes about where they're at. And I'm like, you told me the same story 10 times. Like, surely you should just do something about it, right?
Yeah, correct.
But it's just very few people want to take the lead. And I think it's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
It's not about whether you've got the guts to do it or not. It's just about whether you've figured out whether it's the right move for you or not.
For sure. And what's your definition of success? And that could be in your professional life, personal life. What does it look like?
I think just happiness, satisfaction. That's the definition of success. Like I see people from all different walks of life. Some of the wealthiest people I've met are some of the most unhappy. So I don't necessarily consider that to be success.
I agree.
Whereas I see people with very different situations who are extremely happy, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to your satisfaction and your level of happiness at the end of the day. It's not all about, I know we're in financial markets, right? It's all about profit. It's all about how you can make money for people.
Yeah.
But that's not what life's all about. I think that seeing someone with a good level of happiness, whether it be in their family life or just in their own personal well-being, that's what success looks like for me.
I agree. Good on you. Okay, Campbell, quick, short fire questions. First job.
Target.
Really? What'd you do there?
I worked in the toy section.
Good on you. That's not bad.
14 years and 9 months, as soon as I could work.
Really?
Yeah. Went straight in. And then after that, I laid floorboards on the weekend as well, Marston Homes. That was while I was in high school.
That's great.
So I did the night shift, tidying up the toys, and the weekends laying floorboards.
Pretty good one, actually. Did you have a favourite toy?
No.
Yeah. Piece of advice for your younger self.
Go harder.
Yeah, you got you.
Yeah, have a good crack.
What motivates you most as a person?
Family.
Perfect. Tips for driving long-term wealth?
Lower risk solutions are definitely the way to go. Don't shoot for the stars. Go for the more consistent solutions.
Yeah, this is a bit the opposite, this one. But what biggest mistake you see people make in wealth creation?
Don't buy corporate mandates.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. When you're not working, how do you spend your time?
Family, fitness, traveling. So, we try and get a couple of months a year.
Gotcha.
Overseas in.
Yep.
But yeah, mate, it's just a pretty simple life for me. Like, I'm not a big spender. I just like to keep it simple. So if I get to the gym once or twice a day, eat well, spend time with the family and work, I'm happy.
So on the sport front, you clearly played a lot of sport growing up and when you were young. What is it now? Just a bit of gym work or?
Yeah, I do like I do some running. I do things like high rocks. High rocks is like that competition. It's kind of like a CrossFit Games sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So I do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Train with a couple of blokes in the morning. I get down to the local run club of a Friday.
Gotcha.
That sort of stuff. Bit more community focused opposed to the individual sports stuff now. But I might do another high rocks this year. We'll see how we go.
Good on you. Well done. Well, thanks a lot for the chat.
Cheers.
If anyone's interested in catching up with Kieran, he's on LinkedIn. And we'll put the link in the show as well. So thanks a lot. Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.